Let me just find my slide. Sorry. Okay. Where's my slide? I couldn't find it. Couldn't find my slide here.
What is it? Do you recollect the name? Name of the flight? VM, go down. Yes. VM presentation, is that? What is the name of the file?
I think they put Dr. Zhao there, but I couldn't see it.
You remember which name you forwarded? Because they kept the same way.
No, they renamed it.
They did it?
Yeah, they
one file they have
renamed
kept
it.
it the same.
Yes. Close this one, right? This one? Day one presentation? Okay. Okay, right, okay. Getting there. Right. Do we have a point? Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, first of all, and also I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizing committee for, inviting me here today. And most importantly, thank you all for remaining here. I know it's such a long day work, and I'm the second last, so hopefully you are not sleeping during my talk. I try to cheer you up a bit. You may already realize I slightly changed my title a bit because due to the time limitation, I would like to concentrate more on one aspect of my talk, which is monitoring and inhibiting phase separation of amorphous solid dispersion. So this slide shows you what I'm going to cover in the next 15-20 minutes. First of all, I would like to give you a very, very brief introduction about the rationale of amorphous solid dispersion used for poorly water-soluble drugs. And then I'll go through most important issue about amorphous solid dispersion, which is stability issues. And I'll go through different case studies, try to give you a very effective analytical tools for monitoring the phase separation associated with amorphous solid dispersion. And if I have time, I would like to go through another recent study, which is on a promising approach to inhibiting moisture-induced amorphous-amorphous phase separation for the amorphous solid dosage forms. So, in terms of the poorly water-soluble drug, I think in this morning, Dr. Arun Saha briefly mentioned about when you try to deliver the anti-cancer drugs, actually he make the solubility issue as the top. I think that really applies to every area in the pharmaceutical arena. So basically, it has been reported more than 40% of newly discovered drugs have very poor solubility, and 90% of drugs approved since 1995 have very bioavailability issues. And furthermore, for most pharmaceutical companies, many drugs in the pipeline, they fall into the class 2 of the BCS system. And I think everyone is aware of the BCS system. You know what is that. I'm not going to address too much on that one. So basically, when you talk about the poorly water-soluble drug, again, in this morning, I think it should be Dr. Alex. When he gave the talk, he mentioned actually you can always discover very new drug molecules, but normally we go through another pathway. We try to use the reformulation way rather than discovering new drugs. So what I put here on this slide, I try to summarize all the different strategies you can use to overcome the drug solubility issues. For example, you can alternate the solvent system by changing the pH. You can use the co-solvent system. Also, you can change the chemical structure of the drug. You may use the prodrug system, the salt formation, or you can use the nanosizing to reduce the particle size. There are loads of strategies you can use. And today, I'm going to concentrate on solid dispersion, as already mentioned, which is a very promising technology used for poorly water-soluble drugs. So why amorphous solid dispersion, why is such a significant rule for us to use? So here I summarize all these, a number of mechanisms behind which the drug solubility can be enhanced while producing solid dispersion. So most importantly, if you transform the drug from crystalline to amorphous, of course you can achieve a very good solubility, hence the bioavailability, and also, as I mentioned earlier on, the reduction of the particle size, that can contribute a lot. And associated with that, the surface, the contact surface area is another issue associated with that. And also because you have the presence of your polymer, it always can prevent from the aggregation between the drug molecules within the system as well. And finally, the wettability issue can be improved as well. In that way, you can improve the solubility. Okay, that's the mechanisms. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction. And also in terms of the manufacturing process method, I just try to concentrate the two most important methods we use in our lab. Of course, you can use different methods. And we always say there are two main methods which you can use for producing solid dispersion, which is one is melting method, another is solvent evaporation method. For the melting method, most recently, we are using the hot melt extrusion. So what you do, you try to mix your drug and polymer in this equipment. So basically, it's like a one-step process. You can combine the mixing, conveying, homogenizing within the whole process here. And on the right hand here, the spray drying, I think everyone must be quite familiar with this process. What you do, you try to dissolve your drug and polymer in the solution, in a common solution, in your evaporated solution. In that way, you can achieve the solid form at the end. I'm not going to address too much on these two processes. One thing in terms of the amorphous solid dispersion, we always try to achieve the maximum enhancement in the solubility. In that way, we try to achieve a fully amorphous solid dispersion rather than a mixture with the crystalline and amorphous together. But that's our aim. However, if you try to achieve fully amorphous solid dispersion, there's always the solubility issues. So normally for amorphous material, it can be very, very unstable in three different ways, three different scenarios. So firstly, it can be recrystallizing from amorphous to crystalline. That's a very significant pathway. You can, the amorphous material always undergo the nucleation and growth, trying to recrystallize to the crystal form. And also another significant phenomenon is relaxation. So normally amorphous material will be very dynamic. It's always going through the relaxation process, trying to achieve the equilibrium status. That's the second way. And last but not least, you think water is really common. It's really, actually, that's very, very significant instability of amorphous solid dispersion. Amorphous material always absorbs water very, very easily. And one of the case study I'm going to cover later actually associated with the water uptake issue later. So all these phenomena can cause the phase separation in different scenarios. It could be amorphous separation. It could be amorphous with the crystalline region together, or you can have even more complicated situation. Within the drug polymer system, you may have multiple phases separated out. So that's really, really a significant issue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce three significant, very powerful tools for you to use to identify and also better understanding the phase separation in amorphous solid dispersions. AFM, again, I think Dr. Zhao mentioned AFM in your talk. Very briefly, I'm not going to introduce too much, give you the general principle of this technique, what you're going to have. So here is your sample. So normally, if you use AFM, the surface of your sample must be very flattened and smooth. But that's your sample, and you have a probe. You have a tip over here. So what you go, like this is the tip. You have the sample over here. So the tip is trying to approach to the surface of your sample, and you have the deflection. So you keep the deflection constant all the time. In that way, you measure the movement either of your sample or the probe. So you can correct me anyway if I'm making a mistake. So in this way, what information you can get topographic information from the whole detection. So AFM can only allow you to identify what the two different regions are. For example, I'm using one hot map extrusion system here to show you how the AFM works. So that's the hot map extrudate. When you have like a spaghetti thing, coming out through the hot map extruder. So this is like a pellet. So this is the outer surface of your spaghetti, and this is the intersection. So what we can see from the SEM image, from the outer surface here, so you can identify very odd region like the dot over here. So when we use AFM, we can have this image here. Basically, it gives you two faces. So one face is like outer surface here, and another face will be this one. So we try to link the SEM image to the AFM, and then we can identify the two regions within the system. But AFM, if it's only an imaging technique, it can only tell you the two different faces. It couldn't tell you what they are. So that's why I'm trying to move on to another technique, which is based on AFM, but you try to do some change. What you do, for the normal AFM, you have the probe which you are going to use at room temperature. For LTA system, what you do, you try to replace your normal AFM probe with a heated tip. So basically, you heat up the tip, and you increase the temperature, and then you try to approach your probe to the area which you are interested in. In this case, differently from AFM technique, you try to increase the temperature, which means the data you're collecting is like a localized thermal analysis. It's like the DSC, the differential scanning calorimetry, is for the bulk system. But within the LTA, you have the localized thermal analysis data, so which is really fascinating. So just give you a basic idea. Firstly, you still need to use AFM to identify the two different areas, and then you try to approach to these areas. For example, you locate your heated tip to that area, and you can identify when the tip heat up to the temperature, say the melting temperature of your sample, the tip will be penetrating into this surface. At that point, you have a signal just coming through that indicates the melting point or the glass transition of your amorphous material. That's the idea. With this, what the separated phases are. Okay, so AFM tells us the two different phases. LTA tells you more information about the two phases. And then we ask ourselves, if you know the different phases, can we have a general idea about the drug distribution, like how the different phases distributed into the system? And then we move on to the next kind of like the third level of this technique, which is TTM. So it's transition temperature microscopy. What you do with this, basically, you still have LTA. With LTA data, you're only penetrating to one point. So if you try to collect the data, just scanning for a certain area, which means if you try to correlate the temperature to a certain color. For example, I try to say the blue color is quite a low temperature, 60 degrees, and the red color is like high 200. So which means at the end of the TTM experiment, you can generate a color-coded map, which can tell you directly what the different phases are. I hope that makes sense. Okay, but that's the three kind of serious techniques I'm going to really like the core of my talk. So this is a case study we carry out with the TTM. What we have here, this is still the hot map extruded system. So we identified two phases. This is the LTA data, and we try to correlate the LTA data to the TTM. So as you can see here, that's a very nice color-coded TTM map. You can tell actually in this system, at least you have 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can recognize here, that's a really red dot over there, which we ascribe it to the crystal drug remaining. So I don't want to go into too much detail, just give you the general information. Actually, if you use TTM, you can really easily tell what your drug distribution in your system. Okay. And then I move, do I still have time?
Yeah, 5 minutes more.
Okay, brilliant. I think 5 minutes can cover my final case study. And then I move on to the water uptake issue I mentioned earlier on. So in this study, the aim of this study is to investigate the stabilizing effect of Zhao on preventing the moisture-induced phase-phase separation, because previously, we did some work using Zhao for the electronic spinning. I think another lady talked on electronic spinning for the nanofiber earlier on. We used that, and then we found out actually Zhao is very good material because it's really available everywhere, very biodegradable, and you have very good versatile. It's a very versatile excipient due to its low toxicity, sustainable production, and also biodegradable nature of this material as well. So what we do, we choose a system which has a very sensitivity to water uptake, which is a paracetamol and PVP, co-PVP solid dispersion. So this, because paracetamol is slightly water soluble, so when you produce the binary system using paracetamol and the polymer, so the binary system absorbs water very, very easily. So what we do, we try to incorporate Zhao into this system to see, after incorporating, the system can be improved a lot or not in terms of the water uptaking. So what we did, we produced the binary system and the ternary system using spray drying, and then we try to store these two systems under the same storage conditions, 25 degree 50 RH for over 3 months. So what we do after that, we try to characterize the two systems while using different techniques, like including MTDSC, TGA, DVS, coupled with the microscope. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, so before the long-term stability, we try to do some DVS study to see what really the two systems will be behaving. And then we have the general idea before we put the two systems into the storage. So with the DVS study, as you can see here, the binary system, basically, it absorbs water around 50 relative humidity. And for the ternary system, it's about 70. That really indicates that Zhao really helped in this system. And also, in addition, if you can have a look here, so that's the binary system because you have a gap here, which means the sorption and desorption process, they are not reversible. Like, the system can be destroyed very easily. So for the ternary system, it's really reversible. That's the sorption, and you have the desorption over there. There's no gap, which means it's quite a reversible system. You can kind of save the system very, very easily. But that's the DVS data we have. And also, with the DVS, we have the microscope just coupled with this system. We can observe very directly what happens, what's the image changing. So basically, the microscope imaging backing up our DVS data. You can see at 50 RH, you can see the change for the binary system. At 70 RH, you can see the change for the ternary system, which is really explaining to each other. And then we carried out the long-term stability. After the 3 months stability, we try to use the TGA to kind of monitor the whole system all through the period of time. So as you can see here, the bluish color is the binary system, and the green color is the ternary system. So from the fresh sample until the end of the study, the binary system always show a very low water content, which means during the whole process, it absorbs water really, really lower than the binary system. And then we also did the MTDSC experiment. So I just want to show you here the significant change afterwards. So the fresh sample, the binary system and the ternary system, both of the systems produce a single TG with the MTDSC. I didn't show here, which means it's a really molecularly dispersed system. However, after 3 weeks, you can see the binary system, you can see 2 TGs produced here, which means you already achieved the phase separation, which is not good. For the ternary system, after we incorporating the Zhao into the system, it's still remaining the single TG all through. I'm just on the timing. And finally, just to give you a very brief conclusion, first of all, characterization of physical structure of amorphous cell dispersion, especially for the phase separation, it requires a lot of novel techniques. So I hope after today's presentation of mine, you can think about, you may use the AFM, LTA, and TTM system, try to apply to your own study. I don't know what you are interested in. And also then can be considered as a potential stabilizer for inhibiting the moisture-induced phase separation. And finally, I would like to thank my colleague, Dr. Jonathan here. Now he's working for Oxford Instrument. He used to be within our group as a postdoc, and he moved on last year. And he did a lot of work on TTM, the LTA work. And Celia, she's a student of mine who carried out the same work I introduced, and also the surface management systems in UK, because we were collaborating for the DVS study, and also Share Pharmaceuticals. We did a lot of hot extrusion work with them as well. And here's our group photo, because when we took this photo, it's about Christmas time. Not a lot of people, around at the time, so it's a slightly smaller group. And just very interestingly, the Christmas tree here, so all this decoration we did using the 3D printing, just try to make all the decoration things, which is quite nice. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
One question.
Do you have any questions? Yes.
I assume this is an AFM method. Are you in contact mode with this?
Yeah, actually, we can use contact mode or tapping mode.
How do you remove local heating effects? Especially in tapping mode, I would think if you heat up the tip, you get a second signal.
Yes.
Thermal fluctuation. Is there a set way to remove that signal?
Yes, a very good question, because, I didn't have time to go through the different modes. So basically for AFM, you can have the contacting mode or the tapping mode. I think you are quite familiar with that. So if you try to say, like, you want to detect the interaction between the two systems, you may use the contact mode. But tapping mode is kind of, when we use the LTA, I think tapping mode is more often used, I have to say. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a very, very good question. No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.